I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, a local school employee was arrested by ICE agents, and as usual, the truth is much different than what you might have heard about it in the media. Plus, did I just come up with a new way to fight back against pro-crime policies? I think so. And the city of Olympia, Washington, doesn't want landlords to be able to screen potential tenants for virtually anything. That and much more coming up today on Undivided. Remember to sign up to support the show for $5 a month at undividedpod.com. And while you're there, shop our merch store. That's undividedpod.com. Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandi Kruse. A lie, what is it saying? A lie gets halfway around the world before the truth even puts on its shoes, I think is the saying. That's the case in a story you've probably seen on the news last night about a local school staffer who was arrested by ICE. And of course, the automatic thought is, let's freak out about it. This is probably wrong. The Trump administration has stolen this great educator from us, and they absolutely did nothing wrong whatsoever. So I want to play out for you how this story played out publicly. And then we'll get to the truth of the matter, which raises a whole nother set of issues about whether your children are really safe at school. Whether local school districts in sanctuary states like Washington or other sanctuary cities and states across the country, whether schools are properly vetting the individuals who they're bringing into their school districts to work with your kids. The answer is, of course, you know that. But let's go through again how this all played out. So I think our friend Jonathan Cho was one of the first ones to push this out there, although on community groups, the news had been circulating since Friday evening, that a Juanita High School theater manager named Fernando Roca was apprehended by ICE agents. At the time, the circumstances around the arrest were unclear, happened Friday evening. Washington State Senator Manka Dhingra said she's trying to get Roca released. And again, like I said, not only Cho, but this was on a parenting group for middle and high school kids in the Lake Washington School District, which was in Kirkland. And that post read from, I'm assuming, just a parent. I've just been told that our beloved theater director at JHS, Juanita High School, has been detained by ICE. And I am wondering if anyone else in the theater community can confirm this, and if there is any way we can ensure he receives due process and help get him representation. He has been an amazing mentor to my son, and I want to do anything I can to help them. And in the comments was State Senator Manka Dhingra, who said, my office has reached out to our federal delegation to try to get him released. So the parent just wants due process for him, which I think is great. Everyone should get due process. But Manka Dhingra, immediately, we want to get him released, right? So this immediately, for anyone with common sense, starts to raise some alarm bells. Okay, was there someone working at this school who's in the country illegally? And that might not surprise you because we live in a sanctuary state, but there are laws around background checks for teachers and staff. These are people going to work around someone else's kids. So there are supposed to be some strict background checks in place to make sure that that person doesn't have a criminal history that would be concerning to parents or that parents ought to know about, right? Like, that's just common sense. But how can you really check someone's background if you don't even know where they're from? How can you really check someone's background if you haven't checked their criminal history and their country of origin? So it brings up all these issues, right? So the Linwood Times did a little digging into this and talked about the background of this teacher, but also the laws and policies that schools are supposed to follow. They wrote, Fernando Roca, theater manager at Juanita High School in Kirkland, was arrested by United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, as first reported by independent journalist Jonathan Cho. Roca's arrest by ICE may signal a loophole in the Keep Washington Working Act, which is our sanctuary law, that may now place students at risk when it comes to federal immigration status verification and school employment requirements. Washington state law mandates rigorous record checks for school employees to ensure child safety. Under state law, school districts must require a record check through the Washington State Patrol Criminal Identification System and the Federal Bureau of Investigation before hiring employees who will have regularly scheduled unsupervised access to children. This includes a fingerprint check using a complete Washington State criminal identification fingerprint card. These checks focus on criminal history, but do not explicitly address immigration status, which is typically verified separately through federal Form I-9 requirements for work authorization. The Lake Washington School District follows state guidelines with job applications processed through systems like ApplyTrack, now part of Frontline Education, where positions specify that candidates must pass criminal background checks. So clearly here, there is a concern about how would, even though we know this is a sanctuary state, and there certainly is children attending school districts in our state that are in the country illegally, and our sanctuary laws protect them. And schools say, we're not going to share any information with ICE. We're not even going to ask immigration status when a child signs up. But it's a much different beast when you're talking about someone working around kids who is supposed to have undergone a rigorous background check. If someone's in the country illegally, putting them through the Washington State Patrol criminal database isn't going to do a damn thing, because they probably won't have any criminal history in Washington State if they've just come into the country illegally or very recently come into the country illegally, because the Washington State Patrol, as far as the Washington State Patrol is concerned, if they come across you, they have nothing in front of them that will dictate to them whether you're a legal citizen or not. So the natural question, of course, is what, if any, process does this school district have in place? And this gets much crazier, by the way. What, if any, process does this school district have in place to catch instances like this? If they have someone who just arrived in the United States and doesn't have a criminal history here because they haven't lived here, and maybe they have a criminal history, what if they killed someone and fled here? Right? Surely there's some sort of process in place to catch that. It's crazy. So the Lake Washington School District gave a statement to the Linwood Times saying, thank you for reaching out. Here's a statement from Lake Washington School District. We're aware that one of our employees appears to have been detained by ICE. We have been in contact with the employee to provide appropriate employment documentation. Due to privacy considerations, we are limited in what we can share, but we're monitoring this situation closely. Like all U.S. employers, the Lake Washington School District completes Form I-9, employment eligibility verification for all new hires, citizens and non-citizens alike. Okay, but what does that really mean? So if you'd watched the news last night, all the TV reporters would have been standing outside Juanita High School with a sob story. Oh my God, the theater director. He's been scooped up by Trump's immigration force. And at Fox 13, they had a quote in here from State Senator Manka Dhingra, who I don't know if her district extends into Kirkland, but I know for sure it's Redmond. So I'm not sure if there's overlap. There might be. The headline, teacher at Juanita High School in Kirkland, Washington, detained by ICE, district confirms. Here's what Senator Manka Dhingra said about the situation, which certainly is alarming. She said, it is imperative that every person living in Washington and in our country has due process as required by the Constitution. I learned of Fernando Roca's ICE detainment on Friday. It is my understanding that Fernando is an asylum seeker and a valued member of our community. My office has been in contact with Congresswoman Susan Delbene's office to see how we may be able to help Fernando during this uncertain time to ensure his rights are not violated. The senator's office said Roca's attorney also told them that not only was he here legally, but he has also never been arrested. Oh my God, what is going on here? He's here legally? That's what his attorney told Senator Manka Dhingra's office, and we know that Senator Manka Dhingra is always operating honestly, right? Well, gosh, he's here legally. He hasn't committed any crimes. Well, then what in the world is ICE doing detaining him? That is awful odd, isn't it? So we've been waiting for ICE to release some sort of statement on all of this for the last several days, and they finally did, including a booking photo of Fernando Alves Roca, 45, a citizen of Brazil, arrested by ERO in Monroe, Washington. Alves entered the U.S. in 2018 under a tourist visa, which he overstayed, and is wanted by law enforcement authorities in Brazil for theft. He'll be detained by ICE pending removal proceedings. Wrap your mind around this. Not quite fitting into that news narrative, is it? Not quite in line with what Senator Manka Dhingra, who's a known liar, said about him. We thought he was an asylum seeker here legally with documentation and proof of verification of employment, who's never committed any other crimes. Well, ICE says not the case. Dude came here on a tourist visa from Brazil, stayed here, and immediately got hired at a public school to work in a theater around kids, despite the fact he's a wanted fugitive from Brazil? Is that really what we wanted and expected our sanctuary policies to do? Think of how insane that is. And think of how many other teachers and staff members where something like this is happening. Sanctuary state, oh no, it's enough to just, scan their criminal history in the Washington State Patrol, despite the fact that we know that the Washington State Patrol criminal background check will not actually show whether they have a criminal history in any other country, let alone whether they're in the country illegally. But that's fine because, sanctuary policies, we protect everyone. Fugitives from other countries, no big deal. Came here just a couple months ago on a tourist visa and overstayed it. Here's a job in our public schools. You guys, this is nuts. It's dangerous. I shouldn't laugh about it, but it's the absurdity of it all. And then, of course, the immediate reaction is, we're going to work to get him released. Our congressional delegation is working diligently. It's like the Maryland man, the MS-13 gang member, who you never see Democrats work that hard for American citizens, but now they're working overtime. For some guy who, come to find out, his attorney obviously lied to Senator Dingra's office and said he has no criminal history. I'm sure he doesn't. In the United States, he's only been here for 6 years. I'm pretty confident he doesn't have any criminal history in the United States. But you didn't mention that he's here illegally from Brazil and that he's wanted by police there. And of course, Senator Dingra is going to spread that information without any sort of verification whatsoever. Because it doesn't matter to her, because it's all about pushing the narrative, orange man bad, scooping up valued members of our community. I'm sure he was a fine theater instructor. But he also has a pretty shady background, and I think every parent at that school district deserves to know that the educators and the staff members who are working with their kids have been properly vetted. You would want that if it was an American citizen, would you not? To know that they were properly vetted for their criminal background, that's not controversial. But all of a sudden, because they're illegal and everybody's just obsessed with identitarianism, oh, we don't need that person to be properly vetted. Like, what are you talking about? Progressives are they're such odd ducks to me. It's so crazy. And look, none of this is a particular surprise because we know that school districts have been working overtime to protect illegals. We just on the show the other day had the Washington Education Association. We talked about a presentation that they gave to staff members and teachers that the whole point of it was to help obstruct ICE. It was literally a training session that an attorney put on for the Washington Education Association, teaching them step by step how to obstruct Trump's immigration efforts. And they had this, I'll just revisit a couple of the frames from it because it was so unhinged. What does mass deportation look like? And it had fully geared up, I don't even know. I think that was a picture we decided it was out of LA during the riots. It's that's what mass deportation, no, that's what responding to left-wing rioters looks like when they're trying to assault ICE agents. And then it went on. One of the other slides was, refuse to answer questions. We have to protect people. Not answering questions helps protect those who are more vulnerable by presenting a united front where we all stand together and no one stands apart. When we all refuse to answer questions, we directly resist the fascists' efforts to divide us into good people and bad people. We can present a united front against the forces that want to tear us apart, that thrive on hate and want to destroy our communities. And again, it doesn't matter to them. They didn't, in this presentation, bifurcate law-abiding immigrants from somebody who came here a few years ago, overstayed a tourist visa, and was a fugitive from justice in Brazil. They don't care. It's all the same to them because it's all about identitarianism and it's all about making Donald Trump seem like a fascist, and everything he does is fascist, even if they are doing us a favor by deporting this individual who came into this country under false pretenses, presumably to flee justice in his own country, and who was clearly misrepresenting himself to his current employer, which happens to be a public school district. The left can't use any nuance in this issue. No nuance exists. As I've said many times on the show, I'm happy to have a conversation about who should be a priority and who shouldn't be a priority. And even, or is there room for some sort of sanctuary policies? I've said I understand some of the underlying issues. If you live in a state where somebody's here illegally and they won't participate as a witness in a crime, they won't call 911 if they see a crime in progress because they don't want to be deported. But there's a lot of room between something like that and looking the other way when you have a criminal illegal alien. I mean, ICE has been on the streets picking up child predators, people who traffic in child pornography, murderers, wife beaters. And Democrats treat it all like it's the same, under the same umbrella. And it's crazy. Now, if this was an instance where you had a teacher who was here legally, even if it was on some sort of temporary protected status or, what do you call it? Not amnesty. What was he under when you come in? What was the thing called? Asylum.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden they just go and they scoop him up, right? Just ripped out. You know, I don't think I'd feel as strongly about it. I'm like, well, that doesn't really seem like a priority. Guy was here, he was doing the right thing, had his paperwork in order, he had a job, he's teaching theater. Like, is that really the priority? I could be nuanced about that. But the left refuses to be nuanced at all about the immigration issue, and I think that's why Donald Trump is willing to dig his heels in. And Tom Homan's willing to say, we're not backing down, we're tripling down. Like, you guys won't be reasonable about this. We're sending more agents to Seattle. We're sending more agents to Portland. We're sending more agents to LA and New York and Chicago because you have an inability to be reasonable about it. I mean, is there a single parent, truly, come on, a single parent who would say that they do not want criminal background checks conducted on teachers and staff members at their child's school? Is there a single parent who would say that? If there is, please tell me. If you have a parent in a public school district and you don't care whether the teacher or staff member working with your child every single day has been properly screened, I would love to talk to you about that. But of course, every parent is going to say, well, yeah, unless it's an illegal alien, then they're fine. Then I don't care about what they might have done in their home country. Help me with this one. What do I even do with this? And then meanwhile, what is the media doing? So the media spins all these as sob stories, right? And if the media was operating honestly, again, I'm trying to be reasonable, undivided. If the media was operating honestly, I don't care if they want to cover all these aspects of immigration. If there are genuine stories where you've got someone who, has been here for 20 years, hasn't committed any new law violations, came as a kid, and is just like working and minding their own business and is ripped away by ICE and the media wants to cover that and whatever it is, I'm fine. But that's like all they cover, singularly focused on all the sad parts of immigration enforcement. Singularly focused. And not on, hey, let's look at this. Does this make a lot of sense? If the state has the ability to help ICE find child predators, find sex traffickers, find killers from other countries, shouldn't the state be doing that? That is, the media can do that kind of reporting. That's not bias. That's just saying, hey, here's what our sanctuary policies protect. Is that the intention? But instead, you've got news outlets like King 5 spending their investigative prowess on looking into the teeny tiny ways that the state of Washington is helping ICE and painting them as some horrible thing, an example. So again, they have the King 5 investigators, right? Well, one of the only units in local news dedicated to actual investigative journalism, in theory. But of course, they spend a lot of time investigating, things that might make the right look bad or Trump look bad or whatever it is. This is a headline: Washington State Agency under fire for sharing driver's data with ICE. The Washington Department of Licensing faces backlash for sharing driver's data with ICE and Border Patrol, sparking outcry from advocates and lawmakers. And the backlash is fully created by King 5. So King 5 looked into this and exposed it, and now they're reporting on the backlash from their reporting, okay? That's important to understand as we progress here. It says the Washington State Department of Licensing is facing scrutiny after a King 5 investigation revealed it has been sharing private driver's license information with federal immigration authorities, including ICE. The King 5 investigation from July 11th uncovered the DOL has signed agreements with ICE, Border Patrol, and 3 other Homeland Security departments, granting them 24/7 access to its search engine. The database contains sensitive details such as names, addresses, driving histories, and vehicle information. Now, what's important to note, and I'll get more into this more, what the database does not include. What do you think the database does not include? Immigration status. Because the state of Washington, because of its sanctuary policies, does not allow it to. But law enforcement agencies across the state and law enforcement agencies that operate within the state are given general access to search the DOL database. And what are they using that for? What can they use that for? To find wanted criminals. So King 5, you know, and these lefties, they don't raise holy hell if the Seattle Police Department is searching the DOL database to find a fugitive and what their address might be or a picture of them to put out on a bulletin. But if it's ICE and they're out there looking for a sex trafficker, nope, can't use the database because you're immigration. Even if the outcome is the same, that you get a violent criminal off the streets. But because one of the violent criminals is in the country illegally and the other one isn't, we're going to make it harder for law enforcement to find the one that's in the country illegally? There was a quote in here from Emerald C. with Georgetown University. Now that Washington's Department of Licensing has reinstated access to driver data, the personal information of any Washingtonian can end up in the hands of ICE simply by applying for a driver's license. We've already seen ICE raids sweep the state, and this mass violation of privacy makes Washingtonians even more vulnerable. It also further erodes already low trust in the government. When people are too afraid to get driver's licenses, communities are less safe. So wait a second, Georgetown University, you're fine with all of our information being searchable for law enforcement. You're fine with all lawful citizens, American citizens' information being searchable for law enforcement. So for instance, if I commit a murder and I flee from justice, they can go on there, get my DOL photo, get a picture of me out on the news. You don't have a problem with that. But you have a problem if that exact same scenario happens and the person's also in the country illegally. So you're doing more to protect illegal aliens who are criminals than to protect American citizens who are criminals. None of it makes any sense. But this is what King 5 News is spending its time on. They go on to say, despite the DOL's assertion that ICE has pledged to use this information solely for serious crimes like human trafficking, concerns are growing about the scope and purpose of the data sharing. Just listen to that sentence for me, okay? Despite DOL's assertion that ICE has pledged to use this information solely for serious crimes like human trafficking, concerns are growing about the scope and purpose of the data sharing. This was fully manufactured story by King 5 News, right? Concerns are growing based on King 5's reporting, right? Based on them putting this out there and people reacting to their own reporting. So they've now created this whole narrative. And the way they word that, despite the DOL's assertion, that the way they word that makes it sound like King 5 doesn't believe that DOL isn't allowing ICE to use this information for anything other than violent crimes. Washington State Senator Lisa Wellman told King 5 News, it's not our responsibility to do ICE's work for them. Echoing the sentiment of many who believe state agencies should not volunteer assistance to federal immigration enforcement. So, State Senator Lisa Wellman, you're saying that you are actually fine hindering or making it more difficult for ICE to be able to get sex traffickers out of our state and out of our communities. You would never say that if it was like, oh, it's not our responsibility to do Seattle PD's work for them. It's not our responsibility to do the Washington State Patrol's work for them. You would never say anything like that. Let's make it more difficult for the Washington State Patrol or the Seattle Police Department to find a wanted murderer or a wanted rapist. But because it's ICE, even if they're tracking down violent criminals, because you are so utterly woke and misguided, you have to try to make their job more difficult? It says the King 5 investigation further revealed a significant increase in federal agents' searches of the DOL portal since Trump's election in November. These searches skyrocketed by 188%. Lorena Gonzalez with the ACLU of Washington emphasized the community's feelings of betrayal. She urged Governor Ferguson to halt state agencies from sharing private data with the federal government unless explicitly mandated by law. In a statement, the Department of Licensing claimed, in part, it is important to understand that this system does not contain information about individuals' immigration status. They added that if the DOL discovers the system is being used for immigration enforcement, they will revoke access. But that's really important here because, like I said, so they can't, it says that these federal agents' searches of DOL's portals since Trump's election in November skyrocketed by 188%. They can't say, let's use this database and find all the illegals. It's not possible. There's no search for that. That information's not in the database. This is ICE saying, we're looking for a suspect. We know they're illegal. We're going to detain them. And yeah, we've got access to this database and we're going to find their last known address. And that's what they all have an issue with? Because they want to thwart the ability of ICE to carry out lawful immigration efforts. It should be against federal law. Because that's what you're doing. You're hindering a lawful law enforcement investigation. We'd never celebrate it or condone it if it were hindering an investigation into an American citizen who committed a crime. But we give these extra bubble of protection around illegals who commit crimes. Now, if the DOL database, like again, had information on immigration status and they were just using it willy-nilly to whatever, I get it. There's so much nuance. But there's no indication they can't even use the database in that way. So King 5, this is what they're spending their investigative team on. It's manufacturing all this outrage about something that just makes good common sense, and then going out there and getting Democratic lawmakers and the ACLU to offer statements of outrage so they can say the community is outraged by this story that we put out there and manufactured. And the media is not out there telling fair stories about like this issue in public schools. Like, hey, we're not vetting people who are coming to our public schools very well. If you could have someone who came here illegally from Brazil, overstayed a visa, and they were wanted by Brazilian authorities and they got a job in a public school district just like that. As I usually say, the media is to blame really for much of this. If the media was telling the truth about the ins and outs of sanctuary policies, the truth of what those sanctuary policies do and who they protect, I don't think we'd have sanctuary policies in the state. Democrats will do what the media allows them to get away with, and the media allows them to get away with whatever they want. And what is all this for? Right? Why are Democrats so literally obsessed with letting people be here legally when there's a path to come here legally? Why are they so obsessed with going to bat for even illegal criminal aliens? Why is Senator Manka Dhingra's office in the middle of the night reaching out to our congressional delegation without knowing the basic facts of the story to try to get this guy out of ICE detention? It's not because they care about immigrants. It's because it's all political to them. There's a political reason why they want sanctuary policies. There's a political reason why they want to pack our state with people who are here illegally and protect them and shield them. You all know what it is by now. It's all tied to the census. It's tied to the apportionment of congressional districts. The more population they have, even illegals are counted in the census. The more population you have, the more seats you get to the United States House of Representatives. And Democrats are in panic mode over mass deportation and the fear that if they lose too much of their population that they have put in place and kept there due to sanctuary policies, that they will lose seats in the U.S. House of Representatives to red states. And it's not just me that's making that up. This is an honest-to-God clip from a Congresswoman from New York, a Democrat. She represents the 9th Congressional District in New York. Her name is Yvette Clarke.
I'm from Brooklyn, New York. We have a diaspora that can absorb a significant number of these migrants. And when I hear colleagues talk about, the doors of the inn being closed, no room in the inn, I'm saying, I need more people in my district, but just for redistricting purposes.
She needs more people in her district for redistricting purposes. So that's not some right-wing conspiracy. That's just the truth. And that's the only truth that makes everything I just discussed finally make sense for you. Is when you realize it's about maintaining power and control. Because otherwise, none of that makes sense. Providing extra sanctuary to illegal criminals more than you even provide to criminals in the United States. Allowing some guy to just hop off a plane from Brazil, overstay his visa, and get a job in a public school, and then immediately jump to try to get him out of detainment without knowing anything about the story. The only way any of that stuff makes sense is if there's a broader motivation for it, above and beyond, oh, we just have such good hearts. And that's the motivation. And you heard it from that Democratic Congresswoman. I need more bodies in my district for redistricting so that in 2 years her congressional seat doesn't disappear. And they're willing to put everyone's lives on the line. They're willing to stretch our social safety net to the brink of collapse so that they can be in power in Washington, D.C. If you haven't woken up to that by now, I don't know what will wake you up to it. All right, coming up next, speaking of Washington Democrats and being pro-crime, I think I have come up with a new way to defeat their pro-crime agenda, okay? I'll talk about it in our segment Unbelievable. First, I have encouraged you guys for years now to take the First Mark Challenge and become a member of the First Mark family. I'm a member of the First Mark family. Undivided is insured through First Mark. Nicole's a member of the First Mark family. And so many Undivided viewers and listeners are insured through First Mark because it's an exceptional company. They treat you like family. And you know what? They have great service. And if anyone is going to be able to save you money on insurance, it's them. We got a great comment from Lisa in Grays Harbor County, who said she's been watching us from day one, hearing about First Mark. She finally talked her husband into doing the First Mark Challenge. She said they weren't able to save the money on their personal insurance, but then she asked them about their business policies. And that's when she got transferred to First Mark's business department, talked to Marie, and they saved them 50% a year on their business insurance. 50% a year. As a small business, and as someone who has business insurance myself through First Mark, you have no idea how nice it is to have someone on your side, in this state especially, actually trying to save your business money while the state is trying to screw your business over and raise your taxes every other day. So to have First Mark come in 50%, that's awesome. So that's Lisa's story of taking the First Mark Challenge. Will your story be next? FirstMarkInsurance.com, FirstMarkInsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you. First of all, I'm a genius. You already knew that, right? But I have a new strategy to be able to defeat future pro-crime policies that are introduced in Olympia. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. I've been thinking about this for a couple weeks now because we've been kind of slowly building this story. But for several years, going back at least 3 years, Democrats in Olympia have been trying to push through a policy that would prohibit the police from pulling a vehicle over if the primary reason they're pulling the vehicle over is a non-moving violation. So, for instance, they don't want police or state patrol out on the highway to see someone with a broken taillight or a broken headlight or big cracks in their windshield or an expired tab, and to be able to pull them over just for that reason. Because Democrats believe that it leads to racist policing and that it disproportionately impacts the poor because they're saying that these issues are created predominantly because you're poor and you just don't have the money to fix it. This was last introduced just this past legislative session. This was the story from the State Standard. Washington bill would set new limits on when police can stop drivers. It says House Bill 1512 at the time was a top priority for the Washington chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union and the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability. Instead of pulling people over, officers would send warnings in the mail about non-moving violations if they had no other reason for a stop. Now, that didn't go anywhere this session. However, we know that Democrats are only strengthening their majorities. They're purging their party of moderates. And so I don't think it's very long before the remaining opposition within the Democratic Party in Washington state collapses and they're able to push this thing through. And so then, and you could still, as a law enforcement officer, if you've got someone speeding, then you could ding them for these other things. But what police will say is oftentimes there's a vehicle where it's suspicious for a number of reasons, and they're trying to find a way to stop it so they can investigate further, right? There's a lot of public safety reasons why police officers would say we need the ability to be able to pull someone over for one of these crimes. So this is interesting because it goes hand in hand with another story we've been talking about on the show. And this is going to be my new strategy because I don't support this. I don't support limiting really much of any ability for police to be able to stop a vehicle out on our roadways in the interest of keeping people safe, especially when you have something that is against the law, right? I do not believe we should take away the ability of police to do that. I do not think it'll make our roadways more safe. So I'm thinking, okay, if they bring this back up this next session, how am I going to stop it? My plan for stopping it is to talk about how a law like that would benefit Republicans. So if we start focusing on how pro-crime policies might benefit Republicans and conservatives, well, Democrats will back away from it immediately. Case in point. So we had a story on the show like 2 months ago. Report states 500,000 Washington drivers have expired tabs. Remember this? And I said, well, I know why 500,000 drivers have expired tabs. It's because there's probably a bunch of them who voted for $30 car tabs a bajillion times, are pissed off that they didn't get it and the state keeps taking it away. And so they just, out of protest, they're not going to renew their tabs anymore. So Tim Eyman, I'm on his email list, and he was the guy behind $30 car tabs, right? He sent out an email the other day saying, last night I got pulled over again for expired tabs. Once again, no ticket after I explained I was engaging in a peaceful political protest. Join the resistance. So he says that he gets pulled over. His tabs haven't been updated since 2019. He explains to the police officer why he's not updating his tabs, and the police officer lets him go. But the reason he was pulled over was because police officers can still pull over in Washington state just for an expired tab, okay? Keep following me here. So Tim Eyman in this email went on to encourage his other followers to do this as well, saying not renewing is not a crime. It's also not a moving violation, so there's no impact on insurance. It's the equivalent of a parking ticket. There are millions of vehicles in Washington state and not that many law enforcement officers. The chances are very slim you'll get pulled over. And if you do, you can contest it. So here you have Tim Eyman, who's one of the most hated political figures from the state Democratic Party, right? And he's been able to get away for years now with not renewing his tabs. And he is instructing his fellow Republicans and conservatives not to renew their tabs either. You know what will make this much more successful for them? If Democrats pass a law saying police can't pull you over for having expired tabs. So if you do the math, this pro-crime policy, are you listening, Democrats? This pro-crime policy benefits Tim Eyman. It benefits Republicans and conservatives who, not for poverty reasons, but because you screwed them over on $30 car tabs, they don't want to pay their $600, $700, $800 renewal bill. So this is my new plan.
I am just going to give
Democrats,
a little warning.
What?
You can still get a parking ticket. A
Yes,
parking
you can.
officer can give you a ticket for expired
You can.
tabs. So you just have to be careful about where you park.
Right.
Don't park where a parking enforcement officer is patrolling.
Oh, 100%.
Because they can give you a ticket for expired tabs.
And if you're speeding
Just
and
a little-
also have expired tabs, you can still get in trouble for it.
Yep.
But it will make it a lot easier for Tim Eyman to get away with it.
Yeah.
If they can't pull him over simply for having expired tabs.
Right. No,
So
I'm all for
Democrats
it.
that want to make it harder to pull over criminals, to pull over people who they suspect of committing violent crimes because they think that's just racist and classist, who they're really protecting
Right.
are the Tim Eymans of the world.
I love it.
Who they're really protecting are Republicans and conservatives.
Yep.
So maybe they ought to think twice about bringing that bill back up in the 2026 legislative session.
I would love to see the numbers next year. How many people have not renewed their tabs? I
Yep.
love this idea. I just think this is it. This is how we fight back.
And look, I do think, I believe in law and order.
I know it's
So
really
I
hard
renew my
because
tabs. I do.
I know.
But I
same.
understand why people don't want to renew them.
I mean,
I
I-
also think that passing a law like that would be a net negative for public safety.
Mm-hmm.
So I do not want a law like that on the books. So if that means that it makes it more likely that you get pulled over for having your expired tabs, then I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
What's up?
We have to have something. This is it.
I love it.
Some disobedience.
We just have to find ways that all their pro-crime policies benefit conservatives. Like, if they're thinking about getting people out of prison early, we got to find one conservative MAGA Trump supporter who that policy would benefit. And then they'll just abandon it, right?
Right.
Oh, that's not who we meant to help. Just be
But
crazy.
all of their disobedience is really disobedient and frustrating. And this is good.
Yeah.
I like it.
I like it.
Ugh.
Good stuff. But the second they realize that they're helping out Tim Eyman, they'll never introduce that policy ever again.
Yeah.
Because now they know they're helping out
that's
Tim
what I
Eyman.
mean. And it gives us, there's so many benefits.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to go down to the city of Olympia next. They're getting crazier and crazier by the day. Now they want to strip the ability of landlords to screen tenants for literally anything. We'll go through their latest recommendations. First, happening this Thursday, 2 days from now, Zach Abraham and his team at Bulwark Capital are having their halftime live webinar. Halftime? Why is it halftime? Well, it's halfway through the year. So if your retirement portfolio was a sports team, how well do you think it performed in the first half of 2025? Is your financial advisor making any halftime adjustments? Don't know, have no clue what's going on? Well, maybe this is a good indication that you should join the halftime live webinar and get your questions answered. So it's Thursday, July 24th. It's not going to be a rah-rah speech. It's going to be a straight-up X's and O's discussion on global unrest affecting the market, perspective on the outlook for the second half of 2025, plus a full reveal of how Bulwark is always looking for opportunities to lower risk, lower cost, give your retirement as much upside as possible. Hear directly from Zach Abraham as he shares insights in his free halftime webinar. Again, it's happening this Thursday. You can still sign up. Register now, knowyourriskpodcast.com. And if you can't make the webinar, at least get a second opinion. It's totally free. Schedule your Know Your Risk portfolio review at knowyourriskpodcast.com. All right, love this one. First, in the interest of full disclosure, we are in bed with the big bad landlords, and they sponsor our weekly housing segment at the Rental Housing Association of Washington. I'm going to mention that on the front end. And by the way, if you care about housing policy, you should consider attending their yearly conference. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be talking about housing policy. The yearly conference is called Engage at the Rental Housing Association of Washington. It's October 22nd and 23rd at Meydenbauer Center. I'm sure they'll be talking about all the asinine policies in the state, like rent control, probably what I'm just about to discuss with you with what's happening in Olympia. So if you're just interested in housing policy, if you're a landlord, if you're a builder, if you're a developer, sign up for Engage today. rhawa.org, rhawa.org. Love it. All right. So the city of Olympia has gotten just nutso, completely nutso. We were talking, a couple months ago about they're considering all these new reparations policies above and beyond anything happening anywhere else in the country, above and beyond what's happening in Washington state, across the state. I mean, they want to give tax breaks to people based on skin color, business loans to people based on skin color, gifts of money to people based on skin color. They're thinking of everything, right? So now that wokeness in Olympia is going to extend even more into tenant screening. We already know there have been some restrictions in place in multiple cities across Washington about the extent to which you can screen a tenant. Like, for instance, there's I think it's called first come, first serve, first arrival thing, where if you're the first qualified tenant, they have to rent the apartment to you. Even if you give them bad juju, or something, they have to rent it to you. So there's all these things that Seattle has done, for instance, where the goal is to reduce discrimination. So Olympia is taking all of that a step further. They're working on creating a tenant screening proposal to vote potentially into city ordinance. So they've been doing this for a couple months now. They say the council would like to learn more about challenges in the tenant screening process and barriers to accessing housing in the screening process. They're seeking the community's help to understand these issues and the impacts on both landlords and tenants by gathering input from both to explore where common goals and solutions are possible. So then they get into, of course, all the radical equity stuff, saying data has shown that people of color are more likely to be convicted of crimes and incarcerated than white people, have less access to credits and lower average credit scores, and are evicted at higher rates than white people. This can lead to being screened out of housing opportunities. It also says black people are arrested for drug offenses at twice the rate. More than 50% of white U.S. households have a FICO credit score above 700, compared with only 21% of black U.S. households. So you get the direction they're going here. Basically, they're saying the universe exists to hold black people down, and so we need to try to prevent that in the screening process when they're looking for an apartment. So a couple things here before I really get into the doozies. So they're still taking technically public input on this idea. There's online at the city of Olympia, there's 2 questionnaires and surveys that are posted. They close on August 8th. You have to register as either a citizen or landlord to be able to participate. So if you live in Olympia or own properties in Olympia, I highly recommend some sane people participate. Not that I think the feedback is going to make a difference, because at this point, it seems like they have their ideas pretty much in stone. They released this whole, it says, tenant screening policy options through the city's land use and environmental committee. So these are their staff recommendations. So what do you want to bet that their staff recommendations are what become the actual recommendations? They don't care about public input. They certainly don't care about landlord input or reasonable citizen input on any of this. So first they shared their renter feedback. So they did this assessment, and they specifically asked renters. It said 25% of survey respondents stated that application or screening barriers stand in the way of meeting their housing goals. So things like criminal history, credit score, income, etc. Which just the listed there, those were some pretty important things, don't you think, for determining what kind of renter you're going to be? 74%, by the way, 74% of renters, of course, said they're very supportive of prohibiting certain types of renter screening that have, quote, little to do with whether an applicant would make a good tenant. And that's the characterization of the city of Olympia. These things have little to do with whether an applicant would make a good tenant. Things like criminal history, credit score, income. How does your income have little to do with whether you'd make a good tenant? Isn't that like factor number one? Can you pay to live here? So here's some of the staff recommendations. Some of these are absolutely crazy. Staff recommendations. Set limitations on what aspects of credit history can and cannot be considered. Tenants may not be rejected based on the following criteria: solely based on having no credit history or insufficient credit history, having medical or educational, vocational training debt, credit history or credit score if they use a housing voucher or have a cosigner and guarantor. So if you're using a housing voucher, which would be like for low-income individuals who get it from the government, wouldn't even be able to factor in your credit history at all. Okay, so they basically don't want landlords to be able to use credit history. They go on to say, set limitations on what aspects of rental history can or cannot be considered. Staff recommend that landlords may not take adverse action based on certain rental history, such as evictions where the tenant prevailed. I think that one's fair. Evictions that were withdrawn, settled, or dismissed, which we see that all the time because the system is so backed up. That we had an instance where somebody was living in a house for a year and a half that they didn't pay for. And the landlord ended up settling just to get them out of there. So if that happened in the city of Olympia, that couldn't be used against them when they go to rent an apartment in the future, the fact that they didn't pay rent for a year and a half. It says it couldn't be used against you if judgments against the tenant have been satisfied. So if you had a past judgment because you weren't paying your rent, as long as you've satisfied it, paid them back or something, then it can't be used against you in the future? Absolutely crazy. This one really got me. Staff recommendation. Prohibit rejecting applicants if they do not provide a social security number. Okay. How are they supposed to check your background for anything? All that stuff we just talked about, criminal history, credit score, all of that is going to be tied to your social security number. So if they don't, I could just go in and say, I don't have a social security number. If I had some sort of shady background, well, I could even create some sort of new identity, just start over from scratch. So in the city of Olympia, they don't want a landlord to be able to determine your worthiness to rent to based on how much money you make, what your credit score looks like, whether you paid your rent at previous units, whether you're a criminal, whether you're in the country illegally. They just want landlords to have to turn the keys over to the first person who asks for them. That'll turn out great, Olympia. And I'm sure that will also not make our housing crisis any worse. Great idea. All right, coming up next, I've got a trifecta of Donald Trump misses. I got to call him out when he does dumb shit, and I've got a trifecta of it for you today. First, if you are thinking about selling your home, maybe for some of the reasons I just mentioned, reach out to our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com. Sellwithwes.com. Wes has been doing this in our area for a long time. He knows the market like the back of his hand. He's an awesome guy, great communicator, is going to be very communicative throughout the process, and he's going to look at you, obviously, as a partner in trying to sell your home for the most possible value, which is what everyone wants. So that might mean making some cosmetic upgrades to your home. If that's the case, Wes can step in. He can totally manage those projects, manage the contractors. You don't even have to pay for the upgrades until closing, which takes the financial burden off of you as well. So you don't have to come out a bunch of money out of pocket. So sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. It simply is just a better way to sell your home. Okay, let's get to some stories of Trump just doing Trump things. Still love him in the sense that I don't regret voting for him. But, I got to call balls and strikes. So you saw this Wall Street Journal article that was put out about Trump and Epstein, where Trump allegedly drew this figure of a nude woman and wrote some missive to Jeffrey Epstein, and it was put into a book with stuff from other people for Epstein's 50th birthday. Trump says he doesn't write it. He didn't write it. He says he never seen it before in his life. But of course, the Wall Street Journal comes out with it, which is so fascinating to me because I really believe that if there were anything relating to Trump and Epstein, it would have come out during the 2024 election. So I tend to believe Donald Trump, that it's either completely manufactured or it's been made to seem like it's something it's not. Anyway, Donald Trump is mad. He sued the Wall Street Journal over it. So that is pending. So what does he do as a result? He has now banished a Wall Street Journal reporter. He banished him from an upcoming trip. So not permanently, but this is absolutely retribution. From AP, Trump escalates battle with Wall Street Journal over Epstein story. President Donald Trump on Monday followed up his lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal over last week's Jeffrey Epstein story by banishing one of the newspaper's reporters from Air Force One for an upcoming Scotland trip. The move reflects Trump's aggressiveness toward media who displease him, even a media magnate, Rupert Murdoch, which owns the Wall Street Journal. Trump filed a $10 billion defamation lawsuit against the Journal and Murdoch on Friday because the newspaper's article about a sexually suggestive letter bearing Trump's name that was included in a 2003 album compiled for alleged sex trafficker Epstein's birthday. The president has denied having anything to do with it. On Monday, the White House said it was removing a Journal reporter from the pool covering the president's trip this weekend to his golf courses in Turnberry and Aberdeen in Scotland. The Journal's Torini Party had been scheduled to cover him on the trip. Petty, stupid, ridiculous, and something that they would do in communist China. Look, all I'm saying is, first of all, there's no evidence. Now, I am not going to opine on, or should I, on the Wall Street Journal story itself. I don't know if Donald Trump wrote that in 2003 or whatever it was. I don't necessarily have an issue with putting it out there and saying that this bears his name and having readers draw your own conclusion. I don't know what the standard is there. But I do know that Donald Trump can't just pick and choose which major reporters and news outlets are given access to him. He's the president of the United States. Everything he does is paid for with taxpayer funds. And I feel very similar to when he banned the Associated Press from the Oval Office for a couple days because they wouldn't call the Gulf of America the Gulf of America, and they called it the Gulf of Mexico. It just isn't a good look, and it's totally unnecessary. And, Trump loves to spar with the media. So hell, invite this reporter on the trip, and then while you're over there in Scotland, give him a few verbal jabs, give him a verbal tongue lashing. It makes good video content. And then you have the upper hand as opposed to looking petty and saying, because your outlet ran a story I do not agree with and I do not like, you can't come on Air Force One. Because you're already doing, the avenue for the president is the lawsuit. If it's not true, if you can, have good reason to believe it's not true, whatever it is, and you think you can prevail in court, sue him. And that's what he's doing. And then leave it there while the lawsuit progresses. Say some mean things about the Wall Street Journal publicly. Again, give the reporter a tongue lashing while you're golfing at Turnberry. But when you become the petty one, it looks like you have something to hide. And I don't like when the president does that. Speaking of petty distractions, President Donald Trump is threatening Washington Stadium deal unless NFL team readopts the Redskins name. Why? I get it. I didn't like all the cancel culture stuff either. So it was the Washington Redskins. Now, it's the Washington Commanders. It's only because everybody came out and said, oh my God, Redskins is racist toward Native Americans. I thought that was stupid. In fact, there were a lot of high schools in our state who were named after, their mascots were named after Native Americans. And the tribes liked it. But the Washington State Democrats are like, it's racist. We know better than you, whether it's offensive. So I do think the whole thing was stupid. But Donald Trump is now saying that he will upend a new stadium deal unless they go back to calling themselves the Redskins. He said on Truth Social, I may put a restriction on them that if they don't change the name back to the original Washington Redskins and get rid of the ridiculous moniker Washington Commanders, I won't make a deal for them to build a stadium in Washington. The team would be much more valuable and the deal would be more exciting for everyone. Cleveland should do the same with the Cleveland Indians. The owner of the Cleveland baseball team, Matt Dolan, who is very political, has lost 3 elections in a row because of that ridiculous name change. What he doesn't understand is that if he changed the name back to the Cleveland Indians, he might actually win an election. Indians are being treated very unfairly. Make Indians great again. MIGA. Anyway, it's stupid. I don't know if he really means it. I don't know if he's just trying to be funny. I don't know if he just wanted to say make Indians great again. But I don't support and would not support the president of the United States putting some sort of leverage over what a privately owned sports team calls itself. And not to mention, you know how much money they had to spend changing it to the Washington Commanders? You know how much money they'd have to spend changing it back? Only for, I don't know, in 4 years, the Democrats to get control and now being offended is in vogue again. And then they're like, you have to change it back again. So it's just ridiculous. So that's story number 2, where Donald Trump, he's just, gets distracted easy. This one, at first, I saw the headline. I thought that's a great idea. And then I thought more about it. And I'm like, that's not going to do anything at all. From Forbes, new $250 U.S. visa integrity fee to raise costs for American visitors. Okay. It says the new U.S. visa integrity fee will be important to know about for any of your relatives, friends, or business associates planning to visit the United States in the coming months. Starting in late 2025, the U.S. government will begin charging a $250 visa integrity fee to most foreign nationals applying for a U.S. visa. This fee was established under the One Big Beautiful Bill, signed into law July 4th, and is likely to affect millions of travelers. Okay, so wrap your mind around this. And you have to pay a fees entering certain countries, right? But this is an integrity fee. So if you're coming here for business or for travel, pleasure, whatever it is, visit a family member, you have to pay a $250 fee. The idea is if you leave when you're supposed to leave and don't do anything shady here, you get the money back, right? Okay. In theory, I understand it. Do you really think $250 is going to be the difference between whether people stay here illegally or not? You have Mexican nationals who paid thousands of dollars to the drug cartel to get here. You don't think they'd sacrifice $250 to overstay a visa? I don't think that's going to be the end-all be-all or make any difference whatsoever. Like the guy from Brazil that we talked about at the top of the show, who came here on a visitor visa clearly with the intention to stay here and get a job in a public school district. You think he's going to be dissuaded by not getting that $250 back? Nicole, do you disagree with me? Your face looks like you disagree with me.
No, so that one, like, I just don't care, because you do get it back if you're a good person, and if you don't care and you overstayed and whatever, you lose it. Or if you're coming here because you're escaping something and you lose it, then fine, you lose it. So I just don't care.
But as long as they're not holding it up as something that's going to make some sort of difference. It says
it probably won't. But
it says, according to DHS, the policy aims to reduce visa overstays, a long-standing issue in U.S. immigration enforcement. So it aims to reduce visa overstays. No one is going to it's not going to be a make or break for $250 where they overstay a visa. Because that's a serious thing. You can end up in the ICE detention center if you overstay a visa.
Right. But if you're making money off of it, at least you're going to pay for some of that cost that we're...
So like a moneymaker. At least the U.S., if they're framing it as the U.S. is going to profit off of, we're going to still go out and deport them, but we're going to make money.
We're just, making up some of the costs that's...
Yeah, it says hundreds of thousands of travelers each year remain in the country beyond their authorized period of stay, according to government data. By requiring a financial incentive for departure or status compliance, the government hopes to deter such violations. So they're treating it like a deterrent. It's not going to be a deterrent.
It won't be a deterrent.
If being detained in a federal detention center is not a deterrent, or being sent to Alligator Alcatraz, like the $250 isn't a deterrent. Because remember the story of the chick from London or something who was here backpacking? And what happened? She overstayed her visa. They sent her to the ICE detention center for 2 weeks in SeaTac. So that's all the deterrent you need.
I'm not sure if she overstayed, though. She worked for her lodging.
Oh, that's what it was.
Wasn't supposed
she violated the terms of her condition.
Right. I think she didn't really realize that working for her lodging was working. But there's just things that people do that they don't realize that it has the consequences for for working or overstaying your visa are bigger than you think.
Well, I also feel bad for people who have, David Poland just said this in the chat, the $250 fee will only prevent people from visiting family here in the U.S. who cannot afford this. Also, countries who have a worse economy and will not be able to visit. And I don't know if you're traveling internationally, that $250.
Get it back.
But that's the other thing, is if you're coming here from another country and you don't have $250, you shouldn't be coming here, because then you don't have money to travel here.
Yeah,
so that's kind of weird. But I do agree with the sentiment that, because it's not clear how fast that was part of the article. It's not clear how fast you'll get the money back. So it's not clear if it'll take days, weeks, or months to get the money back. And they're still working that out. And look, I remember a period of time in my life, where if I was short $250, I'd be short on rent.
Sure.
So that was a stretch. So if you have family and you're Canadian and you're trying to visit and you're having to do that routinely, how quickly is it going to be given back to you?
Ooh,
so
yeah,
there
just
is
for crossing
this,
the American-Canadian border, that would
so
be
that doesn't seem
different.
fair, and it's not going to deter anything. So strike three, Donald.
I do feel like the bookkeeping on that might be more of a pain than it's worth. But.
Right, because then you're going to have to, I think it's Mexico. No, it wasn't Mexico, somewhere else. Was it Jamaica? I went to a country recently where you had to pay this little fee to get in.
And you got back?
Tourist fee. No, you didn't get it
no.
back. You just had to pay it. And it was part of going to the country.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But this one's just, it does seem cumbersome. It seems bureaucratic. And it's not going to do what they say it's going to do. It's not going to deter
The
anything.
Redskins one doesn't surprise me. That was one of his campaign things. He kept saying, and he's trying to make good on some of these little ones because the big ones are hard.
The big ones are hard. I just don't want him to get distracted, and I don't want him to give the other side easy gotchas, All right, should we do our daily subscriber show poll?
Okay, let's
I think so. So I wanted to gauge your guys' opinion on this before I got to the story in the show. I said, do you believe police should be able to pull vehicles over strictly for a non-moving violation, such as a broken taillight or expired tabs? Yes or no? And this was, again, I put this out before because I didn't want people to think about it under the guise of the whole $30 car tabs issue. So Nicole, do you think police should be able to pull someone over because they've got for only a non-moving violation?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you where I think police should be able to do that if they deem it necessary. I mean, I kind of hope that it continues as is, where that's not really their biggest concern, but yeah, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I am too, because I know that a lot can come from that.
Yes.
I
think they need tools. That's a tool.
And I'm also not a criminal, right? So
Yes,
I think the only
exactly.
people who care and want this is criminals who are trafficking drugs, and they don't want police to have some tiny little reason to pull them over and then smell all the weed in their car. Well, I guess weed is, if you can't traffic weed, but you can smoke it, I guess. But you know what I mean? So I think it's something that criminals don't want. Bill, it's an extremely valuable tool. 82% of our subscribers say yes, they believe police should be able to pull you over. And also, for the people who don't pay their car tabs because of $30 car tabs, I think they want the opportunity to tell the police officer why they're not paying it.
I
right?
feel like most police are with us on this
Right.
one.
And 100%. Bill Swick, it's an extremely valuable tool with no good reason not to do it. Rick says, if a person is operating a vehicle with expired tabs, that person does not have insurance, given that the vehicle is not licensed. That is harmful to others because it exposes everyone else to undue financial risk. So I think that police should stop and ticket the violators. Is that true that you lose your insurance if your tabs aren't up to date?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so, but I guess I'm not 100% sure.
Because it's a non-moving violation, so I don't think it dings your insurance.
I don't know. Doc, they catch a lot of people for major crimes by doing a stop for a small infraction. By the way, Cairo Radio Morning News Show did have a segment about the dying babies. Oh, something totally separate. I was surprised, but they did do it. Oh, that's good to hear. Let me see here. Renee, I believe it's a waste of resources. We have way bigger problems than broken taillights and expired tabs. It's a revenue issue, not a safety issue. See here. Chris, I voted yes, even though I haven't bought tabs since 2019. Chris is one of the faithful few. Weisscastle, no. I believe pulling people over should be limited to violations deemed as a danger to other people. No brake lights or signal lights could be dangerous, but people should learn the arm signaling techniques, but lights can always fail. Expired tabs are in no way a danger to others. Although I just think it's kind of unfair sometimes. I'm doing all the right things. I'm paying my stupid car tabs. I'm keeping my stupid lights
really
working
unfair.
and stuff. And it's they're just looking for ways to let people who don't do everything they're supposed to do off the hook, and it bothers me. Chris says, no, I think pretextual stops are just fishing expeditions. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I don't want a police state where they're just pulling people over for no reason. But I'm sorry, yeah, if your tail light is out or your blinker or something and they're driving down the freeway, I mean, I don't want them to throw the book at you, but they should be able to stop you and say, hey, your tail light's out. You need to get that fixed. Also, I'm going to run a warrant on check on you. Fine with me. Fine by me. Okay, we'll get to comments coming up right now. Oh, I was like, what am I missing? Cynthia Martin, $10 super chat. I missed yesterday's show on Antifa Lawson. Imagine waking up to that if I had to choose between going home with a saber-toothed... Oh, that's funny. Imagine waking up to that. If I had to choose between going home with that or a saber-toothed tiger, I'd have a leash saying, here, kitty, kitty. Oh my God, that's funny. Talking about Jeremy Lawson, the Antifa rioter, he looks crazy. His mugshot looked like I thought his mugshot would look. Oh yeah, Papa Woody, R.I.P. Ozzy Osbourne passed away. It sounded like his family was really anticipating that. He did like a final...
I mean, he's looked on the brink of that for 10 years, I'd say.
Yeah. I'm not like a big celebrity knowledgeable person. I mean, I obviously know who that is, but Two Ladies Midwest Adventures. Brandi, you're forgetting about those who are affected by identity fraud. Them stealing tax information harms more. It's illegal too. What is that in reference to? Are you talking about identity fraud like from illegals or what? Probably because I said that Olympia doesn't want you to have to use a social security number. So you could just steal someone else's identity and rent an apartment or something like that. On the teacher who overstayed his visa and immediately got a job at a public school, Brian Beck, good information, Brian. He says he made $90,000 a year plus benefits, according to the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. So this guy comes here in 2018 from Brazil, a wanted fugitive, on a tourist visa, overstays his visa, and almost immediately gets a job at a theater getting paid $90,000 with your money.
Yeah, your money, and you're paying his benefits. The benefits package is probably 15, 20 grand minimum. He's probably paying into a 401k.
$90,000 is a lot of money for no offense, but for a theater staffer. I guess it is Seattle. I guess it is Seattle, but that's a lot of money. I guess I'm used to, I don't know. I grew up in the Midwest, so sometimes I gauge things based on like Midwest money, you know? Ron Jones, he checked all the boxes for a DEI hire. That's all that counts in our state. Yeah, right? Weiss Castle, Congress needs to change that. Only eligible voters should be counted for any redistricting of seats. I agree. It's insane that they use the census for redistricting and apportionment of congressional seats. And it doesn't even have to include legal citizens.
But
it's nuts.
That is nuts.
And the Democrats will never be able to deny that that's what it is. I mean, there's literally a member of Congress saying, I need those bodies, right? On the tabs issue, D-Man in Seattle, someone needs to fight those parking tickets for expired tabs. Tabs are not required for parking because the city says, as required by state law does not require tabs for parking. Interesting.
It must have something to do with the paid parking aspect of it. I don't know. That I'm sure that's been discussed somehow,
you know what we need to check on?
Check on that.
You know what we need to check up on? Remind me of this. Remember that the woke people got all mad because some of them got parking tickets during the Juneteenth celebration, and they demanded that the police chief waive all the parking tickets? We need to find out if they waived all the parking tickets. Because again, they could not have. It's Seattle. It is Seattle. Okay. We need to check because that would be such a grounds for a lawsuit. It would be insane. Nicole Atwood, my tabs are expired and I'm not paying the ridiculous amount. I pay enough taxes here already. Yeah.
Especially if you're along the Sound Trans. Oof.
Oh my gosh, right? Second I moved out of that, it was like, when I was like making almost no money and had, just a real cheap car, my tabs were more when I lived in Seattle than they are now. It's just insane. It's wild. Nightwolf, we all need to do what we can to avoid giving the state any money. We are not represented in government. I sure as heck don't want to pay people who hate me. I get it. Let's see. On Olympia, trying to strip landlords of any ability to screen potential tenants. Crafty Grandma says, my brother is trying to talk me into renting out my mom's house after she moved into assisted living. But this stuff scares the crap out of me. I don't blame you. I don't know why anyone would be a landlord right now.
Oh, I read it as renting out, like you renting your mom's house from your brother.
Oh,
I'm like,
no.
You scared of your brother as your landlord? But
probably, yeah.
Renting. Yes.
Robert Parr, if a
It is
tenant
scary.
can't be screened adequately, is the city assuming responsibility when misconduct occurs? Of course not, Robert. Of course not. On Trump, LaPickett says, I support banning the reporter. The Wall Street Journal people cannot be trusted to report the truth. Keep them away or they will lie more. But then where does that stop? Then you have a Democratic president in and they're not allowing Fox News in, or, the Free Press or the Daily Wire or whatever it is. We can't get into this of presidents dictating that. The Oval Office is our office. The White House is our house. Air Force One is our plane. And so as much as I think that Wall Street Journal story was totally out of thin air, and if there was any validity to it, it would have brought up years ago, as much as I don't agree with reporting of a lot of the mainstream outlets, we don't want to give a president, we don't want to normalize a president banning news outlets that are major news organizations because they don't like a story they did. Because you better believe that Democrats will do it the next time around. And I'm just not okay with normalizing that. Suck it up and just do what you do best. Trump, those are his glory moments. When he's yelling at fake news Jim Acosta, you know what I mean? It's like, just let him do it.
Although I just think that the Wall Street, I don't know. When you have this an active lawsuit like that, and they're manufacturing a ridiculous story like that.
There's no evidence they manufactured it.
I mean, according to him, there is that. I mean,
well, right,
but how claims he didn't do that, and you're under the impression that that's not true.
Right, but devil's advocate, right? If I did, this has happened many times, where you accuse a politician of doing something, they say, I didn't do that, so you just don't do a story? No,
I
do the
agree.
story, and then you put their comment in it.
Yeah.
That happens every single day in news. And I get it that it's the president, and there's a lot going on, and he's been accused of a lot of things he didn't do. But if you've got this book, it's Donald Trump's signature, you can prove that, and I don't know if it's true, but you can't, the media is never going to get in the practice of, or because someone won't comment on it. Like, no comment. Okay, I guess we can't do the story now because we don't have their side of things.
No.
Like, that can't be how it works.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's
just
weird.
it just seems a little bit, I don't know. You can't let everybody in. I mean, I don't know. It's a weird situation because we do have that. We're in this area of new media as well because, people don't want to let us in because we're new media and things like that. So we are in this age of new media where I don't think the media is acting like media right now. And so I have a hard time being like, yep, they are, they're media because they say they're media. I don't know. Nobody's acting like media. Well,
I want that respect. I want in Olympia them to say, hey,
Yes.
I'm paying taxes as a media company. We're putting
Yes.
out news and information. Do I have a bias? Yes. Do I do my opinion? Yes. But
Yeah.
I don't want the politicians in Olympia to tell me that I can't be there because they don't like what I said about them on the show.
Yeah.
So how can I advocate Trump doing that against the Wall Street Journal?
Well, that's what I mean. I think that we need this new, there just has to be some sort of new standards, but then you can't let everybody in too, is what I'm saying. So there has to be some sort of new standard.
To me, it's all about decorum.
Decorum.
Right. It's about decorum.
And I don't know how they're acting.
Well, yeah. If you had a Wall Street Journal reporter that was acting completely inappropriate, shouting at the president, or if you have a reporter who's threatened, of course, if there's a safety
some of them
issue.
do act pretty ridiculous. We do hear them in press conferences acting pretty ridiculous, and he says that to them.
Yeah, I mean, there have to be some standards, but I don't think you publish a story that I'm now suing your outlet over is a standard that's appropriate for the president to set. We'll have to just agree to disagree.
Well, I'm not disagreeing, but I'm just saying I just think that there are some new standards for media that need to be set.
It's complicated.
The way that
it's complicated because who sets it, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Funny note, Brandi. I had to leave an area where there was too many people smoking pot. I have a CDL and could lose my job failing a drug screening, which happens often for my work. Really? You have a? Can you get? If you're in an area with too much pot smoke, would that show up in your system?
Yes. I mean,
I guess.
I think so.
Anyway.
I don't know to what extent. I mean, it probably would have to be some sort of drug or blood test. I don't know if it would just show up on I don't know.
Doesn't matter. I don't like the smell of weed. I hate the smell of weed. We just
terrible.
had this the other day. We were out boating with Ari Hoffman on Sunday. And it was somebody smoking weed outside. We were sitting at a nice patio having a restaurant. Dude
Why would you do that?
walks by just smoking a doobie. And I'm like, this ruined beautiful fresh air. And he walks by smoking a doobie. I'm like,
So
what a
rude.
loser. Anyway, thank you, Nicole. Let's get to do we have a closing sanity check today? Okay, let's get to our closing sanity check. Here's what I mean about Democrats lacking nuance. There is no doubt that President Donald Trump has significantly improved the situation on the southern border. There's no doubt. It's very obvious. Even Bernie Sanders acknowledged it. Many Democratic members of Congress have acknowledged it. But if you're Karen Bass, you just can't give the orange man any credit.
Go back to Joe Biden again, okay? There was hundreds of thousands of people crossing that border.
Right.
When you look at that border today, is there anything good you think the administration has done in these 6 months at the border?
Well, I will heap praise on the administration for the first 6 months in Los Angeles with the fires. If you ask me, is there anything that they have done good in terms of immigration? I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't think so. We just stopped the flow of millions of people across our southern border. And she doesn't probably see that as a good thing because what did we talk about earlier? It's all about politics. And what she saw coming across the southern border under the Biden administration were future Democratic voters of America. That has been our closing sanity check. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. A special thank you to our paid subscribers who make this show possible. If you would like a special thank you, then become a paid subscriber. It's $5 a month. It's a killer deal. undividedpod.com. Go to undividedpod.com. You get access to our exclusive show Sundays with subscribers. You also get to participate in our daily subscriber show polls during the show. So that's fun to weigh in on the issues of the day. While you're at undividedpod.com, make sure to shop our merch store. We dropped some old goodies, some new ones, and they're limited. Man, those silver truth teller bucket hats are just flying out the door. So make sure you get your hands on one of those. We will see you back here on the live show tomorrow at noon. I got to go to a dentist appointment. Yay me. Yay me.